Hey everyone, Tammy here. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going today. What I'm going to talk about, I guess, how I would describe it is social anxiety, sensory processing disorder, emotional distress, stress, basically any sort of mental and emotional instability, as well as the physical sensations that come along with it. I want to talk about the collective mindset. Thinking for ourselves. So there's kind of a lot going on here, but it came up after a discussion this morning, as a matter of fact, on mental health. For those of you that don't know me, I have a background in pharmacology. I am internationally certified as an aromatherapist and also an ontological coach, which gets into the spirituality of the individual. Not from a religious context, but more along the lines of like tapping into our very essence, which is part of why I work with oils, which is kind of cool. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I appreciate you being here. But like I said, this came around because I got into a conversation this morning around mental health, and the way it came up was that this individual was doing some body work on I believe the client was either they were a therapist or they were involved in mental health in some way, and medications came up. Now, I am aware that the collective mindset, or there's a lot of people that don't agree with pharmaceuticals. And for those of you that are watching, this could be a trigger alert, so please be warned. I do not have a thing against pharmaceuticals. Like I said, my background does start in pharmacology. I'm also the president of the Holistic Chamber of Commerce, the first chapter here in the state of New Mexico, which I'm very, very excited about. And that said, it's time to come into this from a different perspective. What exactly is holistic? Holistic does not necessarily mean natural. Okay, we have this marketing belief that holistic is an alternative way of healing the body. Nothing heals the body but the body itself. And the degree of pain that we're experiencing, whether it be physical, mental, and emotional pain, does start in the body. And yes, there are curative steps that we can take, but this is the reason why. Actually, this is the reason why I started my own a particular radio program on Wednesdays called The Remedial Mystic. Because the fact is that healing begins. It's an inside job. Okay, and so when we talk about pharmaceuticals and we talk about holistic medicine, sometimes that's going to include pharmaceuticals. That's the interesting concept here, and you might be going, wait, what? If you think about what holistic means, it's creating a synergistic dynamic, okay? It's creating synergy. It's creating this uplifting, this alignment of what, if you will. We can do this with any kind of business. We can do this within our communities. We can do this within our life, and we can certainly do this with the body. So holistic is not limited to healthcare. Holistic is not just doing things naturally. Let's face it, you guys, we have the intelligence to create these medications. The way we're going about using them is not exactly ideal. Let's be real about that. I mean, when you can go in and you have a wound that you have actually been taking care of and dealing with for a while, but the doctor takes one look at it and without getting any sort of lab results, puts you on 2 antibiotics. And then when the results come back, you do not have an infection. What the hell? Okay, that's an abuse of power. Forgive me for saying so, that's an abuse of power. I realize this is not mental health, but I'm trying to shape things here. And that is that there's a place for medications. The fact is that medications themselves are not enough. They are not the curative. They aren't even going to stimulate the body to heal for the most part. What it's going to take, like I said, is it starts from the inside. However, medications are specifically designed to target they're very direct in their approach, meaning that they target very specific genetic receptors, and that's it. There's not a synergistic relationship between the chemicals in the pill or pills. It's simply just this chemical is going to do that, this chemical is going to do that, and the rest of these chemicals, well, they're just all inactive. They're just not going to do anything. They're there just for fluff and fill. for the most part. Now, I've seen some medications that will target possibly up to 25 different genetic receptors. Now, here's the interesting thing. During this conversation, the individual that I was speaking to had unintentionally offended the therapist. We're just going to call her a therapist because that's the best I got. I just know, like I said, she works in mental health, but she became offended because she started talking about pharmaceuticals, and ultimately, well, what this person said was, well, as I pointed out, would have been considered offensive. Although he didn't necessarily mean it that way, the crux of it was they just need to get over it. We are just over medicating people, and these people just need to be able to get over it. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Sorry, that's bullshit. Mental health or mental instability is real. Emotional instability is real. Does it warrant a lifetime or a cocktail of medications? I don't believe so. Like I said, but the pharmaceuticals have their place. And so, although I do understand his viewpoint, which is we're overusing, we're overprescribing, there's a large population of people. There's nearly 65% of the U.S. population is on some sort of psychotropic. That's a ton. That's a ton of people on medications. So, but the other problem is those who aren't taking these kinds of medications are the ones that are going, you just need to get over it, shake it off. And while some of that makes sense, we have to, what I'm here to do today is kind of begin to lay a new ground, kind of like pave the way for a different way of looking at this. Because as I said, mental instability, emotional instability, these things are real. What the diagnosis is doesn't really matter much to me. If you really want to know my honest, it doesn't matter to me, because a diagnosis is just simply a pigeonhole, and it kind of gives them a direction on which way to medicate you. But ultimately, you're going to end up switching up meds as it is, because the body builds a resistance. And over time, like I said, these medications are very specific in their mechanisms of action, which means that, again, that they're very specific in how they address the body, but there's no synergistic relationship. Now, when you combine these with things like essential oils that will pair up with those medications, now you've created a holistic effect. You've created a holistic approach. So excluding medications from a holistic perspective is not fair, and it's not wise, because there are cases where medications are warranted. But learning how to integrate these two is where the most powerful healing can begin inside the body. Essential oils are just that. They are also curative remedies, just like medications. The difference between an oil and a medication is it's 100% active. They have maybe up to 100 different constituents that all work together, and they have this amazing, I almost want to call it magical. I'm going to say amazing, but the best way I know it's like, because it interacts with your wiring, the way you are specifically wired. And so it's almost like we are recoding your genetics, because they do modify genetic expression. They are signaling molecules. They are lipophilic chemicals. This is a fact. You can look it up anywhere. This is a fact. And lipophilic compounds are absolutely able to alter the activity of the G-coupled protein receptors, which, believe it or not, we have hundreds, if not thousands of them in our body. So when you take a medication that's only specifically affecting 2 or 25, and you have thousands of these receptors, there's all the body does is start to flip switches. That's all it does. Okay, so you want me to turn this one off, which means I have to turn this one on over here. There's an intelligence to our system that we cannot comprehend. That's the reason for the inclusion of the oils. But that said, the biggest system that we have is the olfactory system. The olfactory system, which has up to 700 receptors that are affected by lipophilic chemicals. This is why we are super sensitive to our world. This is where we're getting this collective mindset, if you will, where people are jumping on the bandwagon, and feeling like they're with their tribe. I'm trying to remember what I said to him this morning, and at the same time, I'm trying to be cognizant of the fact, because the truth is that we oftentimes talk about the truth. The fact is, I hear people say it all the time. Well, I think for myself. Yet we do have a lot of social anxiety. We do have a lot of sensory processing issues, hypersensitivity to smell, hypersensitivity to chemicals, sound, okay? These are all, I mean, and again, like I said, social anxiety. People are heading out into the world, and finding themselves having to decompress after they get home, emotionally distressed because of what they witnessed. Oftentimes what ends up happening is people go home and they start to feel bad about this. They're angry, or they're distressed and they don't know what to do, so often they'll maybe go eat, emotional eating, drinking, trying to, again, like I said, decompress. And so part of my message today is, honestly, it's not about, there's nothing wrong with your body, okay? Your body is simply reacting to its environment. And that's why I was talking about these genetic receptors, because when you have thousands of genetic receptors that are reacting to, are influenced by these lipophilic chemicals, and the environment is full of them, that's significant. Okay, then the next step is that the human body, like every other living organism, puts off its own aromatic compounds. Okay, so catecholamines, which is the chemicals that are producing our neurotransmitters, are aromatic compounds, meaning that they do influence these G-coupled protein receptors, whether they be the olfactory receptors, or the endocannabinoid receptors, or the endogenous opiate receptors, on and on and on. Okay, these are all examples of the G-coupled protein receptors. However, the olfactory system has the most genetic receptors out of any other system in the body. So when we are producing these chemicals that are affecting us at the cell level, but at the same time, we're also emitting these. Okay, just like a plant or an animal, like if dogs can sense. We always talk about the dogs can sense that they can sense that there's something going on, and they can sense that there's danger. What I want to tell you is that they're sensing it because there's chemicals being put out. Okay, so if, let's just say, there's a predator in the area and they're stalking, they're going to be on high alert, right? They're stalking, they're looking, they're putting off chemicals. Other animals with senses. This is part of the protection mechanism. So animals can pick up on this and they'll run. Plants can't run from a threat, so they have to. They are emitting these types of chemicals as well, in order to thwart an attack of an insect or a microbe and what have you. So this is significant information, and the human body does the same thing. So what we end up having is, like, when we get into this tribe, if you will, of this people getting, I don't know if you're even in your own home, or if you've been in a group of people where one person is emotionally distressed and then they start talking. And then the other people, it starts to get everybody starts to get a little worked up. Let's just say it's a heated conversation and they all start to get worked up. That's because everybody's picking up off of one another, and without realizing it. And so when we say, I think for myself and I do for myself, not necessarily, because I was on a radio show the other day with a friend of mine, and one of the questions she asked me is, how do we even know ourselves? And that's a really good question. All too often I've experienced where I pick up on somebody else's energy, or I pick up on what's going on with them, and then the next thing I know is I feel all worked up. And it takes me separating myself. And I oftentimes get accused of, kind of being an introvert and not liking to be around people. That's not the case. I am a very social person. I love interacting with people. At the same time, I thrive when I am able to disengage and just get back to who I am, get back to feeling like myself, and shaking off, literally, this other stuff that I've picked up on. This happens consistently. And so if you've ever been in a situation where people were getting all worked up, when the second you step away, you might feel better again. And then being able to wait a minute, that's not me. But being the biggest challenge that we face is being able to separate ourselves from these feelings, these sensations, these emotions that we're getting. Are they ours? Are they somebody else's? The only way to determine that is to actually be alone. That sounds like a really strange thing to say, given that we're human beings, we're wired for connection. I'm not saying be alone for days, weeks, months on end. I'm saying separate yourself. Allow yourself alone time. I get it. We all like to be around people, and at the same time, I see people never disengaging. They're consistently around somebody. And so they never get in touch with really what's so for them. What are their thoughts? What is authentically theirs? How they feel, how they emote, what is really theirs? This is where our growth and our healing is going to come in, when we can begin to separate ourselves from what isn't ours. That is actually where we'll heal ourselves. This is where we're going to actually begin to see global healing. Because when people can actually all of this social media is doing, I just watched something, or not watched, but noticed myself, a particular politician, not the president, and I'm not going to get politically on any. I'm not going to take sides here. I pay attention to the humans. I pay attention to the human behavior. I question a lot of but then again, I can also see how people are just kind of getting so wrapped up in this that it begins to permeate. Everybody's picking up on this stuff all the time, and nobody's allowing themselves to de-escalate. This is another good reason why people encourage you to get out in nature, to go exercise. Literally get outside so that you can release this energy. Anyway, this one particular politician is out there bashing a parade that took place today, bashing individuals of the parade. And I'm like, what is going on here? This is because all this is doing is creating more animosity. And the point to any of that is that, it's easy to say that we can align with the way somebody thinks. But are we really thinking for ourselves, or are we actually just so tapped in that we don't even know what our own thoughts are? And sometimes it's scary to have our own thoughts. On what I mean by that is to be thinking differently than other people. I can relate to that one so easily. If I'm blinking a lot, that's because I got a fan blowing on me and it's drying my eyes out. But the idea here is to begin to just go, well, wait a minute, I get what you're saying, and I need to kind of process, and what is so for me. And that is one of, I think, our biggest hurdles, is to be able to, or be willing to disengage long enough to be able to determine what is ours. And when you have a world of chemicals, okay, I don't find mental health to be a weakness. The truth is that I see this mental instability and this emotional instability, and people are like panicking, or they're being spotted, so to speak, and then they get taken in and they get a diagnosis and they get put some medication, and then there's all of this back talk in their mind as if there's something wrong with them. And as I said earlier, there's nothing wrong. Between the distress that your physical body is going through due to the environment, and then you have this collective emission of additional chemicals that are not man-made, but that are natural. And we have a lot of people, and when we get into these urban areas where you've got so many people and they're gathering on the streets, you're going to experience, that's all you're ever going to feel. I've lived in cities. It's the reason why I live in the country now. I don't want to feel all that. Don't mind going into the city, but there's days that I'm like, it's kind of like my grandmother used to say, she loved being a grandmother because, well, she could give the kids back. Although she and I hung out and we did a lot together. And I've heard other grandparents say the same thing. I like going to the city, but it's very nice to know that I get to leave. I don't have to stay there in the midst of all of that chemical chaos. Because that's really what it comes down to. It's chemical chaos. Now, the scary part is how do we deal with this? Because if we know this is happening, if we have an olfactory, I mean, in some ways, I envision our body like every pore being like a nose. Although the olfactory system, the aromatic compounds don't necessarily have an aroma. They're just called aromatic. In case you've not seen me before, they're only classified as aromatic compounds because the first two ever discovered had a scent. But a lot of aromatic compounds are undetectable by the nose. Yet they still have an impact on the genetic receptors inside of our body and the olfactory system inside of our body, because the olfactory system is in most of the tissues of our system, of the entire system. So it almost sounds like we are a victim, but we don't have to be. The point is to be aware. Be aware that we're basically plants with complex emotions, and that these complex emotions are emitting these chemicals that are impacting other people. Our children are very, very susceptible to this. And so, number one, the best thing we can do, again, is to separate ourselves from time to time and be able to get back to, well, what is ours? What are our emotions? What are our thoughts, right? How does this feel inside of me? How do I feel about any of this? And then beginning to speak that truth. The next step is, well, I talk about essential oils all the time, and truthfully at this point, there are oils that we could use to help ease the mental and emotional distress. And as we begin to ease the mental and emotional distress, as I said, you can round out any medications that you're taking, creating this holistic influence on the body, creating a synergy, an uplifting synergy that takes you from where you are and kind of bridges the gap to where you want to be. That's the benefit of the oils right there. It really helps to alleviate a lot of the emotional and mental distress and pain. Of course, it also helps with the physiological issues as well. It helps with physical pain too. But it's in the mind. It was interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he's like telling me I must have a really strong opiate system because I have a very high pain tolerance. Well, he takes a shit ton of medications. Pardon my language, but he does. He takes a lot of medications, and those medications are affecting a lot of his neurotransmitters, and it is taking it for mental health purposes. And maybe he does have a strong opiate system. I don't know, but that's a good example, because the brain is responsible for producing all the chemicals that we need for pain relief and anti-inflammatory purposes. The whole body is capable of producing all of those chemicals. And so with the inclusion of, or the integration rather, of oils into mental health situations really sustains physical health, because ultimately you're going to see a diminishment in physical health, because every single one of those chemicals is also responsible for the processes that we have to go through in order to survive or thrive, preferably. So pain is relieved through a number of chemicals that are produced in the body, like nociceptors. GABA is a good one. Glutamate into GABA. GABA is very self-soothing. It's also used a lot for nerve pain. Of course, we have our opiates. We also have our endocannabinoids that we produce. I'm drawing a blank, but the point is that the brain does produce the chemistry required to help relieve the pain. So when you are using oils and integrating them, you can also relieve the physical pain as well as the mental and emotional pain. But how to do that is really depends on the medications that you're taking. It's not a good idea to be making recommendations, just generalized recommendations here, because what's going on with your body, just because you're taking certain medications doesn't tell me what's going on with your body. So it's an alchemy of before we can determine which oils are the best. So you're always welcome to set up some time with me, and let's talk about what that would take for you. At the same time, between those two things by disengaging from time to time from other people and really just beginning to learn how to separate yourself, integrating the oils, because that gives you a better foundation on how to separate yourself. It really adds fuel to your healing process. Again, the only thing that heals the body is the body itself, but integrating, oils with medications is superb. Also adding things like different types of adaptogenic herbs into the process. Let me think. I don't like to use the term superfoods, but nutrient-rich foods is how I would prefer to say it. Nutrient-rich foods, which include your adaptogens, because those are basically used as foods. They're nutrient-rich. They have phytochemicals in there that the oils do not contain. When the body is stressed or taking medications, these nutrients are often diminished because the body's having to work extra hard. So by including various nutrient-rich types of foods and adaptogens with the oils, you have a very, very profound effect. And which ones I would recommend, I could put a list of nutrient-rich adaptogens in the description box below. At the same time, it depends on the oils that you're using. It depends on where we're going with the support in your system. Is it the pituitary? Is it the adrenals? Is it the endocannabinoid system? Is it the digestive system? So it really depends on where we're going with you before I can make the full, because there's no need to take everything. That's like a little bit overkill. So I think I've said everything I want to say. I just wanted to recap that mental health issues are real, and medications have their place. I don't necessarily think we need to be living on them forever. I understand in some cases that may not be, that may be the case. You may be on them for a long term, but regardless, the integration of essential oils and nutrient-rich foods is going to set your life, take it from here to here. Guaranteed. You have my word. It will. Because your body at that point will have the tools it needs to restore itself. Because that's the whole point here, is empowering the healing process. Beyond that, as I said, this is not anybody's fault. Okay, we have a really wacky environment. In case, again, if you have never seen me before, 45 million man-made chemicals being used globally. Over 70,000 of them are confirmed endocrine disruptors. Knowing how to use oils that are not endocrine disruptors, because there are a number of them that are endocrine disruptors, is extraordinarily important, because you'll just exacerbate whatever health issue you have going on. So between the environment impacting us, then there's which is triggering changes in the system, because the second the body gets stressed, it alters the chemistry being produced, which is going to tend to make you more anxious and or more frightened. It's going to just trigger the stress response now, and then somebody gets worked up because somebody over here said something, and then this person gets worked up, and so now you have a world of human beings emitting chemicals also that are significantly impacting anybody within the vicinity. This is how connected this world actually is. So the best way to take care of ourselves is to actually disconnect from time to time, knowing that we're still fully connected. We're here with one another, but it's okay to disengage. It's okay to separate yourself. It's okay to give yourself that space. It's okay to integrate some natural options to support the medications. Your medications are okay. It's all okay. It's just a matter of how to work it in and how to honor you. That's what this is all about. Anyway, I hope this makes sense. I look forward to speaking with you. My email is in the description box below. Please join me over on Aromatherapy is a Lifestyle. It's a private group, a closed group on Facebook, but I do teach my life's work over there. It's just a closed group because it is proprietary information, and I just don't feel like putting it out there to the world. But if you'd like to learn more about essential oils, please join me there. If you'd like a consult, please let me know. I'd be happy to assist you. sign up for my newsletter on my website, synergessence.com. Get over there, get 15% off your first purchase of a consult or a consult package, which means I produce formulas for you at least the first time around. You also get other really fun stuff too when you sign up for my newsletter. So these are different ways that we can stay in touch. And as I mentioned, this is my life's work, so I'm really very happy to share it with you. And until then, you guys take exquisite care of yourselves. I look forward to chatting with you very soon.